Cancer, the week of July 26th to August 1st, 2026, brings a real mix of personal clarity and outward pressure. Mercury is sitting in your own sign this week, freshly direct, giving you a rare window of emotional and mental clarity about yourself. At the same time, Saturn stations exactly retrograde on July 26th at 14 degrees Aries, joining Neptune in your 10th house of career and public standing, while the lunar nodes shift axis this same day. The week builds toward a full moon in Aquarius on July 29th, conjunct Pluto in your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources, opposite the Sun's rare conjunction with Jupiter in your 2nd house of money and personal values. Several of the year's biggest astrological storylines converge within these 7 days. And for you specifically, the split is stark. Real inner clarity on one hand, real outer pressure on the other. Let's go through what all of this actually means for your money, your relationships, and your energy, using the real sky, not generic guesswork. Money and career carry the most public weight of the week, and it centers on a genuine inflection point. Saturn stations exactly retrograde on July 26, joining Neptune, already retrograde, in your 10th house of career and public standing. Saturn entered Aries back in February, opening a new cycle around your professional reputation. And this station marks the first real pause to assess what that cycle has actually built so far, or where you've been avoiding the structure it's been asking for. A station presses harder than an ordinary transit, since the planet appears to hang nearly still in the sky. And with Neptune already sitting in the same house, expect this week to surface a genuine question about your public role. Are you being seen accurately? Or has Neptune's fog in the same house been letting you avoid a harder conversation about direction that's been due for a while? Meanwhile, the Sun meets Jupiter in an exact, generous conjunction in your 2nd house of money on July 29th, which is a genuinely lucky placement for personal finances, recognition of your own worth. A raise, or simply a clearer sense of what you're actually owed, can land around midweek, right alongside the heavier career reckoning happening in the same few days. Use the earlier part of the week while the moon sits in Capricorn, your 6th house of daily work, to handle practical groundwork before the bigger emotional weather arrives. This is a good window for finishing routine tasks, rather than starting anything that requires a big decision. Relationships reach a real culmination this week through the full moon on July 29th, landing in your 8th house of intimacy, shared resources, and transformation, conjunct Pluto, in exact opposition to the Sun-Jupiter conjunction in your 2nd house of personal money and values. This is one of the more intense full moon placements of the year, and it's asking you to weigh your own sense of personal security and self-worth against how much you actually let another person in, financially or emotionally. A conversation about shared money, a joint account, a loan, an inheritance, or simply how much you let a partner see of your inner world may come to a head this week. Pluto's presence adds real depth here. This isn't likely to be a small, forgettable disagreement, even if it starts as one. If you're partnered, use this week to actually say what you need rather than protecting yourself by staying vague, since Cancer's instinct to retreat into self-protection will be strong, right, when honesty would serve you better. If you're single, this full moon may surface an old pattern around trusting someone with your resources or your emotional interior, worth noticing rather than repeating automatically. Lighter day-to-day relational energy comes through Venus in Virgo, sitting in your 3rd house of communication, which supports simple, practical conversations. Even while the bigger 8th house story plays out underneath, use these lighter exchanges to stay connected without needing every conversation this week to carry the full emotional weight of the full moon. Energy and health this week are genuinely favorable, centered on Mercury sitting directly in your own sign, after weeks of retrograde fog. Mercury freshly direct in Cancer means you can finally think and feel clearly about yourself again, without the static of the past month clouding your own self-understanding. Use this clarity actively journal. Have the honest internal conversation you've been avoiding. Say out loud what you've only been feeling privately. This window won't last forever, and Mercury, this clear in your own sign, is worth using deliberately rather than letting the week pass on autopilot. Mars, meanwhile, sits in Gemini, your 12th house of rest and the subconscious, which pulls some of your energy inward and toward quieter processing rather than outward action. This is a good combination for reflection, but it does mean your outward energy may feel lower than usual this week. Don't mistake that for a problem to fix. If people around you expect your usual level of outward engagement and you don't have it to give this week, that's worth naming plainly rather than forcing yourself through it and feeling drained by Friday. There's a longer story underneath the single week worth naming briefly. The lunar nodes shifting onto the Aquarius-Leo axis this same week sets the tone for roughly the next 18 months, landing across your 8th house and your 2nd house. The instruction embedded here is that your growth edge going forward involves deeper intimacy and genuine interdependence with others, your 8th house, rather than staying comfortably self-reliant and privately secure. Your 2nd house, which has been the familiar path, Cancer tends to find real safety in self-sufficiency, quietly managing things alone rather than risking real reliance on someone else. And this 18-month chapter is gently asking you to loosen that grip a little. This week is simply the opening note of that longer chapter, not the whole story. So, here's where this actually leaves you, Cancer. Heading into August, Saturn and Neptune are asking real questions about your career direction. The full moon is asking how much you actually let someone else into your resources and your inner world. And Mercury, freshly clear in your own sign, is giving you the exact clarity you need to answer both honestly if you're willing to use it. If this reading resonated with you, hit like and subscribe.